I'm going to read you a story called How Fred Saved the Day and Got to Meet the Queen of the Nile. And I think as members and friends of Thamesville United Church, where you have a very active drama group, it is my hope that you will really appreciate this particular story. Now, I should just quickly mention too, that I've been battling an enormous head cold and cough all week. So today I have tried to take enough decongestants so that my head's clear, so that I'm not so dry. I feel like I've been in the desert for the last 2 or 3 days. So I'll have to catch the odd sip of tea as I read, just to try and keep things moving okay. And I hope you'll enjoy the story. Fred had once been a huge bulbous mass of a man. So bulbous, in fact, that by middle age he could no longer see his feet for his stomach, which protruded out from his middle and obstructed his view of the ground when he looked straight down. About the time his marriage started to fall apart, he got serious about being huge and bulbous. And the funny thing was that unlike most other people, he got serious about it before he actually knew something was going wrong with his marriage. In fact, the really funny thing was that he didn't actually know anything was wrong with his marriage. His wife was standing at the door with her bags packed. He wept for a few days after she left and felt relief after that. He'd gotten overweight at his last job, which had been as a copy editor at one of the big newspapers in the city. All he'd done all day at work was sit in front of a computer terminal, and all the bad news he was editing seemed to put him in a constant state of depression. So when he came home at night, all he did was sit in front of the TV, and he became huge and bulbous. But the newspaper had a big shake-up caused by the technological advancements in the business, and Fred found himself downsized out of a job. So after considering his options, he took his huge bulbous self and headed back to his roots, which was being a news reporter at a small community newspaper. He answered a classified ad in the paper where he used to work and accepted a position in a tiny dot of a place called Haleyberry, away up in God's country, as his dad said when Fred gave him news of the impending move. "That's up there in God's country," his dad said. "That's where they say if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down." But the move was much to his wife's chagrin. They had a huge argument over it. She wanted to stay in the city, and she wanted him to get a job doing something else besides the news business. It was a portent of things to come. It was the beginning of the end, so to speak. He got serious about being overweight sometime before the fateful day of her leaving, and soon after arriving in Haleyberry. He'd only been in town for a short time and was still staying at a motel, and it had a really big mirror in the bathroom. And after his shower, he caught a full profile of himself in it, except that he didn't even recognize himself. And then he was taken aback when he finally did, realizing just how huge he had become. At the time, he tried to tell himself it was the way the fluorescent lights illuminated the room, seeming to detail each roll and fold. But the image stayed with him, haunting him day and night, until one morning when he pulled himself out of bed, almost in desperation. He put on a pair of tight-fitting track shorts and a sweatshirt, and laced on his cheap department store runners and hit the road. At first, he was so out of shape and so huge that he could barely run to the end of the street. But what he lacked in endurance, he made up for in persistence. He ran in the morning, at lunch, after work, and at night before bed. When he wasn't running, he was thinking about running. He was possessed. And on the hottest day of summer, When even mad dogs and Englishmen were under cover, he was out there pounding the pavement, so that there were those in town who started to wonder about it. And they may have had even more reason to wonder had they known the whole of the tale. When the fitness kick started and he started the running, he also did some radical altering in other areas of his life, like his diet. He ate only salad, tuna, chicken, and cheese, and that was about it, shunning his wife's normal fare of pork chops and hamburger stew. He ate sparsely even at that, and almost always felt hungry, but thought of it as part of his new lean, mean image, like the aches and pains he felt from the constant jarring of running. It was like he was living a sort of Spartan lifestyle, where the pain you felt and the hunger that gnawed at you were somehow proof that you lived, that you had not completely succumbed to the anesthesia of modern life. By the time his wife left and moved back to the city, he was somewhat more lean and mean and looking more like a younger version of himself, instead of the grotesque stranger he'd seen in the mirror in the motel. It was under those circumstances that he met Janice. She was a hairdresser by trade. She reminded him of a movie star the way she was always made up, a little overdone, a little larger than life. And her hair was never the same color for 2 weeks in a row, and he found that kind of unsettling for the first little while. One day she'd be a redhead, and the next day a blonde, and the next a brunette. But he got used to it, and finally decided it was all right to be sort of dating all these different women, because he never had the conscience to do it in real life. He fell in love too easily. A stray glance from an attractive woman and he was under her spell, so he usually kept clear of such situations. Janice was a nice girl. He liked her, but she was fairly one-dimensional. She read romance novels, watched situation comedies on TV, would have had him line dancing if he'd have allowed it. She was a nice girl, and he liked her, but he didn't love her. He knew that right from the beginning, and she knew it too. It was a relationship of convenience, and he got his hair cut for free.